鎌田純子と言います。株式会社ボイジャーの代表取締役を務めさせていただいております。今日ですね、ニューヨークからダグラス・ラシュコフさんをお迎えして、こうしてたくさんの皆様と一緒に講演会を開ける、とても嬉しく思っております。最初にですね、ボイジャーの紹介と、それからどうして私たちがダグラス・ラシュコフさんに出会ったのか、そんなお話をですね、講演の前に私から差し上げたいと思っています。私たちボイジャーは電子出版を専門とする30人ぐらいのそういう規模の会社です。メインのビジネスは読書ビューワー、B&B の開発、それから電子書籍ファイル、これらの制作受注、こういったことをやっています。B&B とそれから制作受注の方はロマンサーというツールを主に使って行っています。で、特徴なのはですね、出版活動もやっているということなんですね。で、読書ビューアーの開発、それからファイルの制作で出版活動までやるというのが私たちのやっぱ大きな特徴だと思います。全部やってるっていうのは非常に珍しい会社だと思います。どうしてこうなっているのか、これはちょっとだけですね、歴史的なことも今日はお話ししてみたいと思います。まず私たちがスタートしたのは1992年。その前ですね、1981年から12年ぐらいの間、私は光学式ビデオディスク、もうわからないかもしれないんですけど、ソフトウェアのそれで作っていました。レーザーディスクっていうんですけど、ブルーレイよりももっと大きくて30センチぐらいの直径があって、重たい円盤状のメディアなんですね。でこれはレーザーカラオケという形で、カラオケで非常にヒットしました。で89年ぐらいからだと思うんですけども、この、レーザーディスクとそれからマッキントッシュを連動したソフトウェア作りを私はやっていました。マッキントッシュはですね、自由で自転車みたいに軽やかなんですよ。動かすことができる、自分自身の手で魅力をすごく感じました。一方ですね、レーザーディスクっていうのは、先ほどの重さもさることながら、作るのがとてもお金もかかるし、スタッフの規模もかかるんですね。重たい、まるで軍艦のような、イージス艦ぐらい大きいかもしれません。で、それがですね、非常に不自由に感じるようになりました。で、私はマッキントッシュでもういっそのこと軽々とやりたいというふうに思ってですね、レーザーディスクをやめました。で、一緒のですね、志を持ったメンバーと92年にこのボイジャーを作ったんですね。その頃、92年ってもう随分前でしょ。だからスマートフォンがない、まずないですね。ノートパソコンもない。インターネットもない。電子書籍を作るツールもない。ということで、私たちはですね、偶然こうした環境にいたもんですから、オーサリングツール作りから始めました。一番最初手掛けたのがエキスパンドブックツールキットというツールです。もう頭の中はですね、マッキントッシュ愛でいっぱいなわけですよ。もうレーザーディスク捨てたぐらいですからね。で、そのマッキントッシュ愛でいっぱいだからこそ、ハイパーカードというソフトを使って電子書籍を作りました。横書き。でも自分で作れるわけですね。で、私たちもそれに見せられて、いろんなところを営業しに行きました。そしたらですね、とても現実の世界は冷たかったんです。日本語の本らしい表示はできないの。横書きじゃない。縦書きに振り仮名ぐらい触れなくちゃ。そうして Windows 版もないの。マッキントッシュじゃね。もうすごい、もう全くプロの商業出版社は見向きもしない。話は聞いてもらえるんですね。だけども前には進まない。そしたらですね、一つの出版社、新潮社だけが約束してくれたんですよ。日本語らしい表示を実現したら作品を出してあげる。約束してくれたんですよ。Windows もやったら出してあげる。で、彼らはですね、私たちが大日本印刷から秀英明朝体、もうとても素敵な、もう本当クラシックな感じのするいいフォントなんですけども、これを手に入れ、ブックデザイナーのまた後々杉浦浩平さんとか平野甲賀さんにもお世話になるんですけども、こうした方たちの助言を得たり、 そして作っていく。でハイブリッド版を作った。そしたらですね、新潮社は本当に出してくれたんです。それがですね、新潮文庫の100冊という100冊入って15,000円の CD ロム。今だと高いですよね。でもそれがなんと3万冊売れたんですよ。4億5,000万です。あ、これはすごい、市場があるんだ、頑張ろうって思ってもうちょっと営業しに行ったら、ところが市場は全く開かなかったんですね。誰もある意味見向きをしてくれない。出版社はすごく後ろ向き。パソコンで本を読むわけがない人間は。目も疲れるでしょう。持ち運びもできないでしょう。ボイジャーはですね、もうやる理由しか考えてないですから、もう前に行こうとするんですけども、出版社にお話しするとやらない理由ばっかり返ってくるんですね。で、これはやっぱり出版というものが少量多品種でロングテールでストックのビジネスだということを私たちはあまり意識していませんでした。しかも電子出版の市場は始まったばかりで、今5,000億ぐらいありますけども、その当時もう10億にも満たないような小さいものだったんですね。ですから出版社の方はデジタルテキストデータがいるんでしょう、それを作るにはお金かかるんだよ、だからやらない。でこの時ですね、出版社の人たちが声にしなかった事実がもう一個あります。出版するためにはデジタルの権利は出版社は持っていませんでした。彼らが出版権を獲得するように行動するようになったのは、それからずっと先のことです。出版社に出版の権利がないわけですから、いくら話をしても電子出版をするはずがないでしょ。でそれを私たちは全く気がついてなかったんですね。しかもパソコンはどんどん進化していきました。もう恐ろしいほどです。進化っていうのは基本良いことですよね。良いことに聞こえると思います。メーカーのビジネスは絶好調になりました。関係の雑誌もすごく売れた。OS が変わった。それを特集する。どんどん雑誌は伸びる。だけども私たちにとってみると CD ロムが動かなくなるっていうことなんですね。どんどん動かなくなりました。 CD ロムですから製造し直し、そんなことがいつまでも続けられるわけがありません。でお店も少なくなっていき、ボイジャーはですね、デジタルでもうデジタルの愛にあふれていたんですけども、現実を目の当たりにしてもう経営の危機、そこまで行きました。でも人間ってですね、不思議なもので、必死になると答えを見つけようというガッツが湧くんですね。で必死に解決策を探して、一つの回答としては、OS の進化に伴ってモニターがどんどん大きくなっていきました。ですからモニターに合わせたらどうだ、文字の表示を拡大するんじゃなくて流し込み直そう、そういったことですね、文字数を変えてテキストをリフローするっていうことで、ボイジャーは日本最初の、もう今の状態よりもはるか前ですね、20年ほど前に日本初のリフロー型の電子書籍っていうのを作りました。ファイル形式も作りましたし、専用のアプリケーションも作りました。もう一度出版社に営業しました。でそうしているうちに出てきたのが iPhone です。スマートフォンはすごく大きいインパクトでした。そして自分たちが作ったファイル形式、これをですね、世界標準のファイル形式に変えたんですね。みんなのファイル形式、独自のものを捨ててみんなとやる。インターナショナルデジタルパブリッシングフォーラム IDPF という団体に参加して、日本語を表示作るための企画 EPUB3 という企画作りにも、独自のファイル形式があったにもかかわらず進んで参加しました。そして先ほど申し上げたように、作るところからスタートした私たち、まるで三つ子の魂100までと言ってもいいぐらいなんですけども、 EPUB3 の読書ビューはウェブベースでブラウザーベースで簡単に読める B&B というものを開発し、 EPUB3 のファイル制作をやれるロマンサーというツールのウェブアプリも開発をし、今主流のビジネスになっています。ボイジャーはこうした経験をもとに本を作る、見る、売る、残す、ロマンサー B&B、書籍の制作、そしてデジタルアーカイブ、 国立国会図書館やインターネットアーカイブ、こちらの方への納品活動、これも行っています。で、創出した経験、自分たちが作り上げた市場がなくなるっていうこの経験はですね、やっぱり残すっていうことにボイジャーがしがみつく大きな理由になりました。残らないものっていうのは文化としてはとても弱くなります。残ってこそ、やはり本は残ってこそ文化だと、電子であってもそういう考え方にたどり着いたわけです。今ですね、おそらく皆さん電子出版盛んだねと、この30年を見れば今が一番盛んだと思います。ただこれから将来を見れば、私は逆に今が一番電子出版がやられてない、もっともっと行くはずだと、行けよう、行こう、行きたい、そういうふうに思っています。で、実感しているのは、個人の方たちが自分たちの意思で出版をするっていうことが原点に戻るかのように増えていることです。これは一種の希望だと思っています。で、ボイジャーも出版活動をしています。アイデアを残す、自分たちの考えを残すっていうことが意義があるというふうに考えている。でもね、ってことではないんですけど、たくさんできないんですね。ボイジャーはやってますけども、出版に携われる人数はとても少ないので、ですからストックのものがないんですね。過去のは CD ロムですから、それは全部ノスタルジアでしかない。で、私たちは出版活動の原点としてデジタルとアナログの狭間を考える、こうした活動を出版のテーマとして選んでいます。マニフェスト本の未来とかいくつかの本を通じてダグラス・ラシュコフさんに出会いました。90年代からですね、ラシュコフさんはデジタルメディアの危険性というものをはっきりと本として残されてきています。それをですね、学んで広めたいというふうに思いました。今フェイクニュース、こうした言葉皆さんご存知ですよね。嘘の情報を例えば有名な評論家が喋ったり SNS で広げたりしたら信じるじゃないですか。でもそれは危険なことかもしれないわけですね。で、私たちボイジャーは先ほどから申し上げているように、この30年間デジタルの良さばかりを中心に広めようと活動してきたわけです。ある意味危険だというふうに考えたことはありませんでした。 OS の進化で市場がほとんど CD ロムの市場がなくなった時も、やっぱりデジタルはいいんだというふうに考えていました。ただラシュコフさんはですね、メディアウイルスとかあるいは SNS の危険性とかっていうのをものすごく早い時代から見抜いてこられた方です。チャット GPT、 皆さんも一度ぐらいは触ったと思います。昨年の11月にこれが嘘なのか真実なのかわからない答えを返してくれるチャット GPT、 こうしたことについてもやはりインターネットの中で一番最初にそれが出てきたのはどこか、こうしたことはおそらく技術的にわかると思いますが、その最初の情報が本当なのか嘘なのか、これはわからないんですね、チャット GPT では。で、そこでやはり人間と人間のコミュニケーションが一番大事なんだと、そういうふうに思います。人間と人間のコミュニケーションこそ重要なんだ、これが私はラシュコフさんが抱えているテーマなんではないかと思っています。で、アメリカではですね、知り合いに聞いたんですけども、デジタル業界では知らない人はいないほど有名な方だと。私たち本当に恥ずかしいんですけど、私は知らなくて、でカリフォルニア大学デイビス校の、メディア戦略担当の人に聞きました。そしたら知らないのっていう感じでびっくりされて、日本でそんなに知名度が低いのかと、すいませんとは思ったんですけども、それは、逆でこれからです。アメリカだとハーパーコリンズ、出版業界の方、この出版社知らない人いないと思います。サイベリアという作品をハーパーコリンズから出しています。それから WW ノートンからチームヒューマン、デジタル生存競争、ノートンから2冊出すっていうのは、日本で例えたらどうでしょう、ものすごくいい出版社から2冊出しているということだと思います。それから OR ブックス、ニューヨークの小さい出版社ですが、ネット社会を生きる10か条、これを出しています。 ボイジャーはですからそのうちの3冊を出版しています。ネット社会を生きる10か条は OR ブックスのジョン・オークスさんが、私たちに教えてくれました。ダグラス・ラシュコフさんはですね、その中でコンピューターは単なる道具ではないと言っています。そうですね、道具ではないです。ここから先がちょっとやはり違うんだなと思うのが、コンピューターは単なる道具ではない、それ自体が生物のようなものだ。人間全体が持つはずの新しい力を私たちから機械へと引き渡してしまう。こういうふうにデジタルの危険性というものに踏み込んで、デジタルとの付き合い方にヒントをくれる、そういった方だと思います。私たちはこの考え方、思想をですね、もっと深く知りたい。皆さんと一緒に。今ですね、DX とかデジタルトランスフォーメーションとか生成系 AI とか、こういう時代ですよね。でも人間が重要だ。機械に使われない人間になろう。こうしたですね、お話を今日はラシュコフさんから伺いたいなと思っています。どうぞご登壇ください。デジタルに惑わされない大人になろう。今日はそういうヒントがあると思います。じゃあどうぞ。
Hi, thank you. I liked listening to your story about finding the book Program or Be Programmed. Because, yes, instead of going to HarperCollins or Random House, I went to a tiny publisher called Or Books. Now, to me, that was the theme of Program or Be Programmed. Because when that book came out in 2010, Amazon was ruling the publishing universe in America. And you would think, as a digital person, pro-technology person, I would want to be with Amazon. They're digital. They own the internet. They're the big company. But if you adopt the programmer's mentality, the hacker mentality, you realize the opposite. You realize I am now in control of how my book will be published. The promise of digital technology is not that we all have to serve a monopoly digital corporation with our books. What Or Books did was say, we have the internet, we have the World Wide Web, we have print-on-demand publishing, we can make our own book, sell it on our own website, not let Amazon have this book at all. We can sell the book for $14 instead of $25. We can keep all the $14 and not give 65% to Jeff Bezos. And we can reach our readers directly. So we may sell fewer books, but we will sell them to the right people, at the right price, and at the right pace, and with the appropriate ethos. That's what program or be programmed means. That is the promise of the digital age. The digits. That we are the makers. We are in charge. We are programming our reality rather than being programmed by the owners of the internet. So when I come here, when I come here, I feel like I'm home, which is strange. I've come all the way, how many miles from New York is this? And I feel like I'm more at home because it was through Japan that I learned my own relationship to technology. I got my first Sony radio when I was 10 years old. My solid state real radio where they put the transistors in the circuit board with real solder. And you can take out a transistor or a diode that breaks and put in another one yourself. Right? You can see the human participation in the creation of the device compared to a radio today, say. It was the monster movies of the 1950s and 1960s that first communicated to me the dangers of runaway technology, the negative effects of using technologies in the wrong way, and the unbridled power of that you can unleash with a new technology. It was Nintendo and Sega that taught me that the television screen was not just a place to receive the messages of the mainstream news, but a place where I could move little white squares up and down in a game like Pong. I mean, think to the first time you ever played Pong. Were you thinking, I love table tennis, and this is a brilliant simulation of table tennis, so I can practice and get better and then beat the Chinese at the Olympics? No. You were thinking, I can move a white square up and down on the TV. The game didn't matter. What mattered was you could turn a knob and move something on the TV. The TV, the sacred space of the television channels, was now open to us. That was revolution. I got the Sony half-inch black and white video Portapack. Was Japanese, and it changed television overnight. Television was no longer something that they made for me to watch. The Portapack, if you're not old enough to remember, the Portapack was at the time, very small, reel-to-reel video recorder that had a cover, and you put straps and wore it on your back. And you had it, and then the camera plugged in, and you could walk around and make television, your own television. The school at New York University, where I first was a professor, was called the Interactive Telecommunications Program. And people think of it as the internet school, because now it's internet and digital technology. But that program was started the year after the Sony Portapak came to the United States. And the president of New York University said, things are changing. We need a school for this new kind of technology. We didn't know digital. He called it interactive telecommunications. Because something was new, something was different. The media was about to go in more than one direction. So when I come here, when I talk to Hagino or to Junko and hear the history of Voyager, it's not the history of how did we make money off our intellectual property. It's the story of how did we convince people to use better technologies to level the playing field of publishing so that anybody can make and publish and distribute a book. That's revolution. That's what Rupert Murdoch doesn't want to hear. That's what William Randolph Hearst doesn't want to hear, that the people can make media. So when I come here, for me, this is coming home. This is my home team. And very often when I talk in the United States, it's not the home team at all. I wrote books about the internet, so the people who usually want me to talk, the people who will pay me to speak, are investors and bankers and dot-com millionaires who want to know how to make money off these technologies. And my personality makes me punish them. I don't know if there's a Japanese word for this, but I tweak them. I tweak them, right? They must know. They've seen my talks. They know who I am. So I feel like they hire me as an intellectual dominatrix to punish them for what they're doing. And I yell at them, and it's as if they say, "Oh, thank you, madam. Please, give me another hit." So I do that, And again, tease them, tweak them, to try to get them to have some sense. And I was invited to one of these talks, or I was invited to what I thought would be one of these talks. And I try not to do these talks because they're boring and they're horrible people. But sometimes they pay enough money that I go. And this time they offered a whole lot of money and a business class air seat. And so I said yes and went out into the middle of the desert in the US to do a talk. It was supposed to be about the future of the digital economy, something like that. And I prepared my talk. You say I don't use my notes, but I prepare talks. I prepared my talk, and they flew me out to the middle of the desert, and then I got into a limousine, and it drove maybe 3 hours out into the middle of the desert. And I'm thinking, what kind of banker drives 3 hours into the middle of the desert to come to a conference? And just when we're going over the last hill in the desert, I see a private landing strip next to this resort where they're landing G5 jets. And I get to this resort. I don't see anybody. They come for me in a golf cart. And they take me to a private bungalow where I stay alone for the night. I have my own hot tub, and it's very deluxe. The next morning, they come for me in a golf cart and bring me to where I'm supposed to do my speech. And I'm sitting in the dressing room, waiting for the guy to come with the microphone, and 5 men come into the dressing room. And they sit around this table, and they say, "This is the talk." And they don't want my notes. They don't want to hear my talk. They just start asking me these very binary questions about the digital future, like Bitcoin or Ethereum, virtual reality or augmented reality. Like I'm supposed to tell them which place to put their bet. Right? Do you bet on virtual? Do you bet on augmented? Do you bet on Bitcoin? Do you bet on Ethereum? And I'm smart about technology, about what's coming, but I'm wrong about the bet. I said Betamax instead of, the VHS, that one. So I said CompuServe instead of AI. I always pick the better technology, which is usually not the one that wins. Except in your case, of course. But it took a struggle, yeah? So they're going back and forth with these binary questions. I'm trying to give them answers. And finally, one of them says, Alaska or New Zealand? What? Which place is better to put our bunker when the event happens? The event is the term they use for the climate crisis or a nuclear accident or electromagnetic pulse or economic revolution that renders civilization impossible. So I ask them, this is the dominatrix comes out once I can't help it. Oh, so you want to build a bunker to escape the apocalypse? Okay, so where will you get your water after the world has been polluted? We have the special filters and that we will use. And your food, we're growing our food in special tubes and greenhouses. It's all, well, finally I asked them, how will you protect your bunkers from us? And they said, we have Navy SEALs. We have already hired Navy SEALs. We can push one button on our smartphone, and these guys are waiting by their helicopters, already warmed up, and they can be at the bunker overnight. So they'll be protected by Navy SEALs in the apocalypse. And then I asked them, okay, so the apocalypse has happened. You have your Navy SEALs that you've hired to protect you. How do you stay in charge of your Navy SEALs once your money is worthless? Right? Your dollars are worthless. Your Bitcoin doesn't even function anymore. Why will they protect you? And one of the guys, he opens up a little moleskin notebook and he writes, how to pay for Navy SEALs with no money. So he'll ask somebody. And they spent the rest of the hour with me trying to figure out the answer to that question. So one of them said, I can be the only person who knows the combination to the safe where we keep the food. So I say, well, The Navy SEALs, they don't have any experience getting information out of people, do they? Right? You'll spend the entire apocalypse being waterboarded by your own security staff. Then one of them says, well, we'll have microchips inside everybody that will control their access to the different parts of the facility. And we can use that with a special button and give them an electric shock if they start misbehaving. So imagine this, that you will control Navy SEALs with electric shock. They're not going to like that very much, right? And finally, I told them, the way to make sure your Navy SEALs take care of you in the apocalypse is to be nice to the Navy SEALs and their families today. And that did not go over well with them. One of them said, okay, so I'm nice to the Navy SEALs, and I'm nice to their families, and nice to their best friends, but when does it stop? Do I have to be nice to everybody? And that's the part they can't get. That's the nightmare of the modern technology billionaire of today. That they think that they can earn enough money to insulate themselves from the reality they are creating by earning money in this way. Right? They want to build enough technology to escape the technology they've already built. It's like they want to build a car that can drive fast enough to escape from its own exhaust. And they don't realize the world is round. You come back into your waste, into your fumes. And this experience depressed me. And I wanted to figure out really how this happened. How are the wealthiest and most powerful people I have ever met, why do they feel so utterly powerless to influence the future? To them, the future is an inevitability that they must prepare for, but that they have no way to change. And these are the technologists. These are the people literally building our future for us. So, for me, it was strange because, like I was saying, the internet and digital technology, for me, was about the opening of new possibility. When we got the internet came along with rave culture and psychedelics, hypertext, chaos math, new physics. And we genuinely believed in the late 1980s, we genuinely believed that the internet would let us open the possibilities of the collective human imagination. We had read the book called The Gaia Hypothesis by James Lovelock, which said that the planet is one big organism. And we thought the internet would let us wire up the brain of this organism, the nervous system, and that would be we human beings. And we were all excited about making reality into a fantasy role-playing game, right? Into in programming, we can save a file as a read-only file or a read-write file. This is old tech. or read-write executable, but let's not go there. Your read files and read-write files. The idea was when you saved a file on the big hard drive that everybody shared, you would either let people just read your file, or you would let them read and write to your file and change the file. And I remember the first time I got to choose between read and read-write. It changed the way I looked at the world. I thought, not only can I read or read-write a computer file, but look at all the other things in the world that have been saved as read-only files, but they could be read-write files. Right? Look at money. Money is a read-only medium. But if I'm a hacker, why can't money be a read-write medium? Why can't I write my own money? Because there's a law saying I can't. Whenever they make a law, it's because you can. Right? They wouldn't need the law because you can read-write money. When did we stop read-writing money? And I did the research. I looked back. Where did money come from? People used to read-write money all the time. In Europe, they had local market monies. In every little market, you could issue the money in the morning, like a poker chip, and the money would expire at the end of the day. People did that, but what was the problem with that? Was people were getting wealthy. They were using read-write monies. Monies that were optimized for transaction, for circulation, for distributed prosperity. And that was bad for the kings. So what did the kings do? They said, all of that money is illegal. You have to use central currency. You have to borrow central currency from me, and you have to pay interest in order to use it. This is the new economic operating system. If you break the law, I will cut off your head. And enough people, enough generations are born into a world with central currency that you have to pay back with interest, that now we think that's just money. It's not just money. It's one kind of money with a very particular bias to favor some 13th century monarchs who died 1,000 years ago. Well, 700 years ago. So the internet, digital technology, opened this way of thinking about the world. This read-write, participatory, open source world of possibility. And those of us who were excited about it were either people in Japan, who I knew, who I met on Usenet and in IRC channels, and hippies in California. LSD-taking hippies. And I went and I visited the Silicon Valley companies, Intel and Apple and Sun, and they were all hiring psychedelic people. And why were they hiring acid heads at Intel? Because these people were comfortable hallucinating a new reality. These were people who were comfortable with the idea that the world is read-write. These were people who were comfortable dreaming reality into existence. And around 1993, when my first book about the internet was canceled, my book Siberia was canceled by its American publisher because they thought the internet would be over by 1994 when the book was supposed to come out. That fast will be done. Around the same time, a new magazine came out called Wired. And Wired in the United States was run by a libertarian named Louis Rossetto. And Wired magazine told a different story about the internet. It was no longer about the wild possibility of humans. It was about making money. They said that the internet would save the stock exchange. You too, we all had a stock market crash in the late 1980s, right, and early 90s, right after you bought Rockefeller Center, remember? And then everything went down, right after Sony bought Columbia Pictures. That crash happened in America too. And Wired magazine said, thanks to the internet, the stock market will now grow exponentially forever. They called this the long boom. That thanks to the internet, because the internet would increase the surface area on the market. The market could only grow so much in the real world. But thanks to the internet, we have the virtual world. So we can grow forever. The problem is, once you have business people and investors betting on the future of the internet, it's no longer about the wild possibilities of these technologies. When you are betting, you don't want possibility, you want probability. You're betting on Betamax or VHS or Sun or Apple. You're betting, so you need to increase the probability that your bet will come out. And that's when we reversed the dynamics of technology. Instead of giving technology to people to increase the possibilities, we used technology on people to increase the probability that they would do what we want them to do. This is when we started to talk about eyeball hours. Do you remember that? That was a metric that they used. The eyeball hours. It's the number of hours that a human being's eyeballs are looking at the screen. They said we are living in an attention economy, that the real estate of the internet is infinite, but the number of eyeball hours that human beings can spend looking at the screen, that is finite. So we need to develop technologies that can extract more and more, that can control people and keep their eyes on your screen. That's why we said you want to make a sticky website. That was the word for a successful website, sticky, because people would get stuck on there. So the internet was no longer about wandering around and finding new things. It was about getting stuck. It was about capitalism, right? It was about using technology to extract value from human beings rather than giving technology to people so they can create value for themselves and their friends. The early internet ethos was something we called shareware. Shareware was software that we shared with each other because the whole technology was based on sharing. The original computers most of us used, they were not individual computers. You went to a terminal, a dumb terminal, just a keyboard that was connected to one big computer. Everybody used the same big computer, and we shared the cycles of the processor. I remember you would write a program yourself, and then you would sign up for a time on the processor to run your program. So, at 3 in the morning, the computer will run my program. So all of us who were involved in this technology, we thought about it not as a marketplace, but as a commons. We thought about it as something we share. So if you write a program and it works, you share it with someone else because we're all in this thing together. I remember when Bill Gates wanted to charge people to use BASIC, and everybody was confused. They were mad. What are you doing? You want to charge money for software? Why would you do that? It was strange to us. It was as if when we develop a language that we're speaking, and every time you say a certain word, you have to pay somebody. The letter T in English, I own the IP on the letter T. Every time you say the, you owe me 0.001 Ethereum on the linguistic blockchain. So yeah, I spent a lot of time blaming capitalism. The unacknowledged underlying operating system of technology. These tech bros, the Elon Musks and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerbergs of this world, they're good at programming, and they are happy to disrupt the taxi industry, or disrupt the book industry, or disrupt the hotel industry. But none of them want to disrupt the underlying operating system. They don't even know it's there. They assume that capitalism is a condition of nature, that it's a pre-existing condition. They don't see it. It's as if you woke up in a world where every computer was a Macintosh, you wouldn't know there's such a thing as an operating system. You would just call that computer. That's the way these guys think about capitalism. They were children. They are. Mark Zuckerberg is a freshman at Harvard, and he makes something, and they take him and his technology. Peter Thiel takes him and says, "This is great. Here's your money. Here's your plan." Mark didn't have time to take economics or to take history or philosophy or ethics. He was a child, and he transferred parental authority onto the venture capitalist. They're interrupting us, they know. They know what we're doing. Of course they do, right? They're listening. They care. That's the nice thing about surveillance. At least someone cares what I'm doing, right? I like to think. So I blamed capitalism for a long time, but then I realized it's not just capitalism. There's also something about... it's important, they gotta go. There's also something about technology itself that engenders this way of thinking. I remember I was with Timothy Leary. I don't know if you know him. Timothy Leary was a 1960s psychedelic hero in the United States, a big counterculture hero. And I was with him the first time he used the internet, the Mosaic browser. And he clicked on some things and he said, "Doug, this is more powerful than acid." Meaning more powerful than LSD. And he said, that's because you feel connected to everything there is and you don't have to eat anything. The problem with LSD, though, with acid, is the quality of your trip depends on what he called your set and your setting. The quality of your psychedelic experience depends on your mindset, how you're thinking about it, and the setting where you are doing it. So the original set and setting of the internet was creative capacity of the collective human organism. The new set and setting of the internet was extraction, surveillance, and control. And we have been living on an essentially psychedelic substrate for 40 years with a set and setting of surveillance, paranoia, and control and extraction. And this is why we are all having such a bad trip. Americans, at least, have gone insane. But part of this is our approach to the technology itself. When I was with Timothy Leary and he was reading the first big book on MIT's Media Lab. The Media Lab is one of the main American university programs where digital technology was developed. And artificial intelligence and the web, all these things happened there. And there was this book by Stuart Brand, who was an internet counterculture hero in some ways. He wrote this book about the Media Lab, and I was sitting with Timothy the weekend that he read this book, and he was circling things in pen and writing lots of notes, and I thought he was so excited about the Media Lab. But when he finished the book, he slammed it shut, and he threw it across the room, and he went, "Blah!" Like he was vomiting. I said, What happened? And he said, first, only 3% of the names in the index are women. That's how you know they have a problem. And he said, second, these men want to recreate the womb. That, he said, their mothers probably were unable to anticipate their every need, and now their vision of the future is to rise above matter in a protected womb of digital technology that anticipates every one of their needs and brings them what they want before they even know they want it. That they want to rise, they want to leave, they want to escape this weird, crazy, strange, unpredictable world and be in their perfect digital bubble. And when I think back to that, I realize that the tech bros, the billionaires I spoke with who want their bunkers, who want to go to Mars or go wherever, they're not doing it because the world is ending. Right? They're using the apocalypse as an excuse to do what they've always wanted. This is their goal, to escape from nature, to escape from women, to escape from unpredictability, to escape from us. You know, this is what Mark Zuckerberg means when he talks about the metaverse. That place, did you see the demo of Mark Zuckerberg's Web3 metaverse? He's running around with nothing below the waist. That's not the world I want to live in. But see, cut that off. It's not there. Right? Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. He wants to go to Mars, to build a dome and live on Mars. Even a nuclear bombed Earth is better than Mars. Mars is not hospitable. And Ray Kurzweil, He's a transhumanist engineer, a chief engineer at Google. He and Sam Altman, the artificial intelligence man, they both want to upload their brains to the cloud. They don't even want a body anymore. They want to leave this reality and go up there. Right? So where does that come from? This desire to rise above. You know, Peter Thiel, the man who helped invent PayPal and then Palantir, a surveillance network, a billionaire in America, a tech billionaire. He wrote a book about his tech and business philosophy, and it's called From Zero to One. That's an interesting title, From Zero to One. What his argument is that in order to be successful, you have to operate one order of magnitude above everybody else. So everybody is competing, say, in the airlines are all competing for customers. So what you do is create the website that aggregates all the airlines. Go one level above. That's what they meant when they said there's Web 1 of all the e-commerce companies, and Web 2 is the social media that will aggregate them. And then when Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook social media stops working, what does he say? We'll go to Web 3, right? Which is nothing, right? Web 3 is AI, crypto, and virtual reality, and any other future technology he can say is up there. But going from 0 to 1 is being above everybody else. It's somehow getting up there. That's what the technologists want. But that's also what capitalism wants. You think about how capitalism works, how finance works. Even central currency, which we just talked about. I'm transacting with Junko, and Hagino makes money by giving us the money that we use to transact. So he is one level above. I'm working, she's working, we're trading. He finds out how to financialize our transaction. So he gives us the money. Then he invests stock in his money, and he does derivatives on his stock. And he does derivatives on his derivatives. This is what finance is, right? There's the reality of work and transaction. There's the money, there's the stock, there's the derivatives, derivatives of derivatives, and so on. When you take that, all those levels of abstraction of finance and combine it with the abstraction of digital technology, boom, they go nuts. Right? You get ultra-fast trading algorithms creating derivatives and meta-derivatives infinitely. It's so powerful that the New York Stock Exchange was purchased by its derivatives exchange in 2013. So think about that. The New York Stock Exchange, which is an abstraction of business, it was consumed by its own abstraction. Just like we are being consumed by the internet, which is our abstraction, or by AI, which is our abstraction of that. Now, where did this come from? That's what I wanted to understand, because I'm a humanist. Where does this come from, this crazy, crazy thing? And I trace it all the way back to, well, you could go back to the beginning of time, but I trace it back to Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was a European who is credited with inventing empirical science. And what empirical science is cause and effect logic, the science of repeatability. And what Francis Bacon said when he was selling the idea of empirical science, he said, empirical science will let us take nature by the forelock, hold her down, and submit her to our will. You got that? That's a tricky translation, right? Take nature by, yes, you heard that right. Take nature by the hair, hold her down, and control her as we want. So that's the tradition of science and technology, is to take nature. Nature's a woman, a scary, unpredictable woman, guided by the moon in the dark of the forest. And we're going to use that to make her predictable. How? Basically by killing. In the science of Francis Bacon, a butterfly is not this thing flying around. To understand the butterfly, you kill it, you put a pin in it, and you stick it in the board where you can look at its pieces. You can weigh it and measure it. Right? You can quantify this butterfly is 2.3 grams of butterfly. I've reduced it to a number. And that kind of science takes the holism of nature and understands it by breaking it up into its little parts, all of its little dead parts. It's categorizing things, it's quantizing things. And it's an anti-spiritual way of understanding reality. Reality is not alive. Reality is not conscious. This is just a Darwinian battle for survival of the fittest little individual. But none of these people, none of these animals are really alive. None of them are really conscious. None of them have souls. This is the argument I always get in with the British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins insists there's nothing going on here. You're just your genes. You're just a program. Your genes are your software, and you're going to run your program. Nothing is happening. No soul, no spirit. Love is an illusion. Just your genes trying to replicate. And that mentality, from Francis Bacon through these, not just scientists, but believers in scientism, these staunch atheists of a particular kind, you go from Francis Bacon through the scientists like Dawkins all the way to Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein's the American horrible guy who he built an island with dormitories where he wanted to put teenage girls who would bear his children. He had space for dozens of them. And the reason it's okay for Epstein to do this is those girls aren't really alive anyway. Right? They're just animals. There's no soul. If there's no soul, if there's no purpose, if there's no spirit, then you might as well just spread your genes as far as you can spread them. And then you look at the scientists that Jeffrey Epstein supported. The scientists he supported were all the ones who put forth this understanding of the world. It's a way of understanding science. It's a way of understanding technology that lets us abuse people, that lets us look at all of humanity and all of nature as resources to extract. Elon Musk looks at our planet as fuel for the rocket to get to Mars. Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto guy, looked at our Earth as stuff that you burn to make crypto. Right? What is Bitcoin? Really, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the way we convert matter of the real world into digital bits. That's all it is. Imagine an alien looking at Earth. We're burning the Earth to prove that we believe in this coin. But this is a form of insanity. So what happens now? Well, our technologists realized that they've run out of places to colonize. Right? That's what the problem with capitalism. Capitalism has to grow. So Europe expanded to Americas and expanded to Africa. They tried to take China, then they lost China. But we ran out of room. So what do we do to keep capitalism going? Well, instead of colonizing places, we use technology to colonize ourselves. Human beings became the medium. There's a whole division at a department at Stanford University called captology. And the captology department is taking the algorithms from Las Vegas slot machines and putting them in our social media feeds. They use a technique called behavioral finance, which is really just getting people to make economic choices that are against their own best interests. How do you get people to stay on the phone even when it's painful? How do you get girls to keep swiping on the phone when it makes them feel bad about themselves? Right? Think about your smartphone. Why do we call it a smartphone? The smartphone, the phone gets smarter about you every time you swipe on it, right? And you get dumber about it. We build technologies that destroy the rapport that human beings can have in the real world. And think about when you have a Zoom conversation or a Skype conversation. You can't really see the other person. You can't see if the pupils of their eyes are getting larger as you speak to them, which happens in real life. You can't see if their breathing is synchronizing with your breathing as they agree with you. You can't see the micro motions of their head establishing rapport. The 500,000 years of painstakingly evolved social mechanisms human beings developed to collaborate with one another, they don't function. So you have a Zoom call with somebody, and they say they agree with you, but your body has not received the cues. So some part of you says, they say they agreed with me, but my mirror neurons didn't fire. The oxytocin didn't go through my bloodstream. I'm not having the physical experience of agreement. Therefore, that person must be lying. So the person says they trust you, they say they believe you, but internally, that only creates distrust and apprehension and anxiety. In many ways, it feels better to have a troll on Twitter say something mean, because at least you believe that. Your body can feel that. And finally, the way we use technology to control human beings in this way would be on Facebook, say. What does Facebook really do? What is the function of Facebook? Facebook takes your past behavior, all of your clicks and likes, to put you into a statistical category, a statistical bucket. And then they know with about 80% accuracy what you will do in the future. So they can look at your past actions and say, look at Doug, what he clicked on, not using logic, just using statistics. It's all algorithms. And we know with 80% accuracy that Douglas will go on a diet in the next month. So 80%. So if they know with 80% accuracy that I will go on a diet in the next month, that I'm part of that cohort, that statistical group, what will they do? My news feed will start getting articles about, oh, look what happens to fat people, or look inside the veins of somebody who eats too much, or here's better ways of eating. Now, they're not putting that in there for me to buy the specific product of a particular advertiser. They're putting these things in my feed to increase the accuracy of their prediction. They want to get the 80% accuracy up to 85 or 90%. The enemy of Facebook are the 20% of people who were going to do something different. The 20% of people who were going to take an individual, a novel approach to their life. The 20% of people who we most desperately need right now. Those are the 20% who will solve climate change, the 20% who will solve the economic crisis, the 20% who will go against Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But what we're doing is using technology to shrink that 20% as much as possible. It's the equivalent of auto-tuning. You know, auto-tuning that we do to the singer. And I understand auto-tuning makes a more commercial product. Right? Auto-tuning is great for Ariana Grande, right? She hits the note, right? You get it, right? Get her right on the perfect note, create the perfect product, sell more records. And I understand. She's a commercial product. You want it to be exact and perfect. Like plastic. But what about when you auto-tune James Brown or Tina Turner? Right? James Brown is reaching up to that note. Right? And so we're going to auto-tune him. So instead it's, right? Get him there. And what are you doing when you do that to James Brown? You are removing the soul, literally the soul from the music. Now, to the technologist, to the Francis Bacon technologist, anything that's not on the note, that's called noise. Right? The note is the signal, and this other stuff is the noise. So we use technology to get rid of the noise. What in science, in genetics, they call the junk DNA. We don't know what that stuff is, so just get rid of it. But what we're doing is removing the place where human life actually exists. Right? That's the soul. It's like living on the ticks of the clock and ignoring the space of time where human existence actually happens. Right? This is the danger of using technology the way we are, of using technology on humanity instead of human beings using technology. I mean, an AI seems to be, wants to be the final step in this process. We're good on time? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. You haven't shown anything. You got 5? Okay. We have 5 minutes. That's enough for AI. When I think about AI, it's funny. Social media, what I'm describing now, social media, it reminds me of the missionaries. The missionaries went to South America from Europe, and they brought Christianity to the natives. And they did intelligence. They learned about the natives. And they sent all the information they had back to the king of Spain. And they used the missionaries to make the people there like the Spaniards. They were friendly. We'll teach you our customs. We'll teach you our religion. Just like social media teaches us a new way of behaving, gets us to want likes, to want to be influencers, to be all nice on TikTok. Then who comes after the missionaries? The conquistadors. Right? The conquistadors are the ones who used all the information collected by the missionaries to come and enslave these people and take them over and replace them. That's what the AIs are. They're the conquistadors. I mean, when you think about the tech bros and their use of digital technology to control populations, they thought they were succeeding until about 2016 in America, when Trump became president. And they realized, oh shit. There was a guy named Steve Bannon who organized the gamers from a scandal called Gamergate to become what they called alt-right activists on social media. And what the tech bros realized was that this got out of control, that they really have failed in their project to control human beings with social media. All they did was made us crazy. So what will they do if they can't control human beings? Replace human beings. That's what the AIs are for. It's to replace us. Because they are going to escape from us one way or another. They believe there's not enough planet to serve both us and them. So in their fantasy, they are served by beautiful robot girls. Right? Not by people. Because the problem with people is like the Navy SEALs. People want autonomy. People want to make choices. People, we don't behave. So their view of reality is skewed. Their view of reality is a nightmare. Right? They're not happy people. They see human beings as a problem to be solved with technology. We are the problem. Even think about your phone. When you get all upset because of all the social media on your phone and you can't think and you're anxious, what are you supposed to do? You get a wellness app, right, to help you meditate. There's an app to solve the problems created by the last app. And then another app to solve that one. Right? It doesn't finally work. Right? Where their mistake is they've bought the idea from empirical science that we are competing individuals for survival. They've read Darwin, but they've read him the wrong way. They think that Darwin is saying we are all competing in a battle for the survival of the fittest individual. But if you actually read the Darwin, he's not saying that at all. What Darwin is saying, what Darwin is celebrating on page after page is the way that species cooperate and collaborate for mutual survival. No, and that's why I wrote the Team Human book. That being human, if we are the most evolved species, it's because we've evolved the most elaborate and developed ways of cooperating and collaborating with each other. We have language and systems and all these different ways to work together. Nature is not a competition. When I was in school, in grade school, they taught me that the big tree gets the sun and shades the little tree so that the little tree dies. And we know that's not true. The big tree gets sun and then shares its nutrients with the little tree through the soil. And the soil is not just dirt. The soil is alive. The soil is filled with mushrooms and mycelia that bring the nutrients from the big tree and share it with the little tree, and they take a little service charge, a little toll for themselves when they do this. Then when the big tree loses its leaves in the winter, the little tree, which is an evergreen, then it shares its nutrients back with the big tree. Right? This is not New Age spiritual mumbo-jumbo. Right? This is just science, real science. That nature is a collaborative dance between different species. And so is society. Society is not an economy of competition. Right? Society is a shareware phenomenon. And we have the opportunity with our technologies to be reminded of that. The opportunity of the digital age, which is still before us, right, is not a revolution of economic growth. That's the same story. The opportunity of the digital age is a renaissance of true human ideals. Right? The fingers, these are the digits. What the digital age was our fingers are getting back on the machines. Our fingers are in charge. We are going to produce, we are going to create, and we are going to do that together. Right? And we have, thanks, Agino, we have new ways to do that. Right? And we can do that and distribute it more widely, right? And more freely than ever before. Right? And what we have to do is have the confidence to believe that the true promise of this digital renaissance, right, is to share in a new era of distributed prosperity. It's still here. It's still definitely here. But to do that, we have to be able to laugh at these crazy billionaires who have the opposite goal. Don't follow them, right? Don't, and certainly the Japanese technology industry should not follow Silicon Valley to Mars. Let them have Mars. And you guys remember, especially as almost indigenous people, you can remember that human beings have the home field advantage on planet Earth. This is our home. This is where we live. We can reclaim it for ourselves, right? And live and I really believe this, and live through this next time rather than accelerating towards the apocalyptic fantasies of these tech bros. Okay, thank you very much.
ダグラス・ラシュコフさん、ありがとうございました。皆様、今一度盛大な拍手をお送りください。ここでこの方にご登壇いただきましょう。デジタル生存競争の日本語版翻訳を担当された堺屋七左衛門さんです。どうぞステージにお上がりください。
デジタル生存競争の翻訳を担当いたしました堺屋七左衛門です。ラシコフさんの書かれたこの本は分かりやすくて面白い部分と複雑で難しい部分とが入り混じっておりますけれども、全体的な内容としては非常に今日の講演でお分かりいただけますように非常に興味深いものになっておりますので、ぜひ皆様お読みいただきまして、読み終わったらまた他の方にも勧めてあげていただければと思っております。よろしくお願いします。
ダグラス・ラシュコフさん、堺屋七左衛門さん、ありがとうございました。どうぞお席の方へお戻りください。本日はダグラス・ラシュコフ来日講演にお集まりいただき誠にありがとうございました。普段私たちは技術に囲まれて生活していますが、それがどこから来てどこへ向かおうとしているのか、その最前線で起きていることを知る機会はほとんどありません。知ろうと思ったことも少ないかもしれません。日本に住んでいるほとんどの人が同じ気持ちではないでしょうか。そうした状況の中で今回ダグラス・ラシュコフさんの言葉を皆様と一緒に耳にすることができました。どのように感じたでしょうか。どうか今回の経験をご自身への問いかけとしていただきたいと思います。以上でダグラス・ラシュコフ来日講演を終了させていただきます。長い時間ご清聴いただきありがとうございました。